today talking about event apps, innovation or just cashing in. And I'm joined with a panel that are going to be controversial and argumentative. Jamie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, I'll introduce them. So, Iain Wallace of Lumiinsight, Andrew Spode Miller of ThinkWall. You can see his work there. Jamie, I'm sure everyone knows of Eventbase, and at Penthouse Lord, Jason from VenueMe. So, straight into the subject, Iain. Event apps, innovation or just cashing in?
So we talked about this earlier, but a bit of both.
There's no sitting on the fence.
But from my style, I think people are cashing in. There's a lot of companies out there doing exactly the same things as far as event apps are concerned. So yeah, it's very easy for people to look at the industry and create quite a simple app using HTML and put it out, saying, "Oh, it's the next big thing." And every time you go to one of these technology events, you see new ones popping up, and then a year later they've all gone away. So I feel at the moment there are a few companies that are really innovating. They're really pushing the boundaries. They're doing something different. But for the most part, people are cashing in. They're jumping on the bandwagon.
Andrew?
Largely agree with Iain.
Don't.
I think as a marketplace, it is largely people trying to do things cheaply to undercut everybody else in a cash cow manner. But there are a select few that are innovating and trying to push things forward.
But where do you think, so let me just push you on that. So the innovation, is that to do with the companies that the app companies are working for, that they're not asking for things that are different?
It's interesting you say that where does the fault lie, is almost what you're saying. And I do actually think a lot of fault does lie in event organisers.
With these guys?
But often not...
They'll lynch you on the way.
Yes,
you know.
But often not for their own fault, because they are very focused on money. And innovation is expensive, especially for developers are really expensive. And the only way you're going to innovate is being able to have the money to actually push this stuff forward. So if you're going to keep going after the imitators that are going to be doing it for a fraction of the cost, then there's not enough money going to the other guys to actually keep innovating and pushing stuff forward. So as much as I'd like to say, yeah, you should be moral and spend more money to kind of push the industry forward, it's unrealistic, but that is really what needs to happen. But
as one of the innovators, Jamie, innovation or cashing in?
Disagree. No. I mean, obviously, fair points all round. There is a selection of cookie cut process now that they're cashing in because no effort goes into making them. Your point about responsibility, I think, is very valid. We are very fortunate where we deal with lots of very large events, so budgets aren't always the issue, and they're not necessarily traditional event organisers, as in what you would know as an expo. Yeah. So we work with the big enterprises. They are innovating massively. I mean, our platform is being pushed forward quarter on quarter by virtue of funding from enterprises to innovate new process, new features, new functions. Every quarter there's something new that comes out. Yeah. And the cookie cut guys will, a year or 18 months down the line, try and emulate some of these elements. But there is a responsibility for sure for event organisers to try and bring some of that energy. So, but
where does that innovation come from? Is that you going to your client, or is that the client coming to you saying, we need beacons, we need signage?
A lot of innovation is evolution, right? Yeah. So we all know what an event is. Collaboration is coming together of a community that's physically together for a period of time, and they always engage in a certain way. And if technology can not quite interfere, but encourage certain traditional methods like networking or beacon mapping and this, that and the other, then it's an obvious evolution from where we are. Where it gets really smart is where we start to disrupt how people behave based on some of the beacon and some of the contextual elements that we bring forward to change the traditions that people have got into a rut with. There's still going to be people meeting people. Yeah. That's never going to go away, and I'm a massive fan of that. But they can do it smarter.
Okay. We're going to come back to what those are in a minute.
Really.
Jason, so innovation or cashing in?
Can I just say what he said?
Yeah.
We're all watching you.
Adam. Bye, Ad.
Bye, Adam. All the way from Manchester for that. Probably what his first girlfriend said.
He's had a girlfriend?
He at least one. I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's exactly what everyone has said. But I think it's the typical marketing cycle. Someone is innovative. Someone comes up with a great idea, a piece of RFID, a beacon, something exciting, and then everyone else goes, there's money in it, so we're all going to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And then everyone else jumps on the bandwagon, and then eventually the laggards come right at the end. But innovators are innovators. They're going to go back and start something else which is creative and exciting. And although when we think of event tech, sometimes we only think of maybe a registration board or a way to look at a map differently, things like 3D printing are just as powerful and are definitely part of the event tech world. And that's innovative because they've taken something that's sort of got a creative idea already and brought it into our world and done really well doing it.
Cool. Thank you. So, Rima. Do you want me to ask your question, or would you like to ask your question? You should ask it.
You can't remember it.
You can't remember it? Do you want me to tell you it? So, how do we keep event apps from being a distraction? Andrew.
How do you keep your mobile phone from being a distraction? That's a problem full stop. I don't think an event app is going to make that any worse. At least when they're distracted by their phones through an event app, it's relevant to where they are and what they're doing. So I think the key point there is how do you stop needless distraction? And that comes down, and then that also pushes the issue of when you should be notifying people anyway. Needless distraction to me would be notifying you far too much about stuff that's going on that you're probably going to ignore the app anyway.
Yeah.
So trying to that fine line of how much feedback you're going to give anyway kind of covers that ground of how much distraction you're going to get.
Jamie. I know what you're going to say.
Are you?
Yeah, shall I say it for you?
I think distractions are an interesting word, but I think relevance, as he touched on just a second ago, my colleague here, is the correct word.
Yeah.
If you apply relevance in your technology and a personalisation, so it's right for me and me only, it's not a distraction, it's an aid, it's an encouragement. And that's where the cookie cut principle doesn't work, innovation does. App or whatever technology is used in an event needs to fit the pocket of the person using it exactly, and they should behave how they've always behaved, but maybe better through technology.
Jason?
There's no surprise I come from a venue event background, and Kevin did it brilliantly. You start an event, and the venue gives you the house rules. He immediately told you where the exits were. There'd be no fire alarms. Control the room, control the event. When you start, explain the technology that's going to be used, and explain how it's best used for your event. You should be doing it before the event even began, and really that education piece leading to the event time.
Iain?
So I agree with what everyone said, but Jamie in particular. So I always look at psychology. So it's the psychology of consumer behaviour and the expectations. So what you do at home, what you do in your personal life, there's an expectation that will move into your business world, into your other environments. Yeah. So talking about distractions, like we use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use these apps all the time. So if you can take that behaviour and just sort of mould it into the event space, then no, it doesn't become a distraction. But that's all around the user experience and why you're actually introducing the technology in the first place.
I think the point is it's distraction / engagement. I think they're virtually the same thing. Yeah. It's what you're trying to do with the event app. If you're building that into the event, as Jason said, then it's not going to be distracting. It's going to add to the engagement.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's very agreeable of you for once.
Mr. Preston, did you want to ask your question? Oh, my God. Your question was, how do we innovate to create real engagement? It's coming to you first. Yeah, now it's your advert.
So, I hate the word engagement because it's so broad. Everyone says we're engaging. And back to the relevance part. Relevance creates engagement, in my perspective. I think there is a lot to be said about pre-event technology as well, creating engagement. So, an app I know very well, R1, we try very hard that we deploy it as early as we can, maybe at the point of registration, It contains elements of, obviously, content, published content, visual content around the show, but most importantly, social content, photography, whatever it may be, to engage the visitors before they turn up, to start planning their day. And that's what sessions they may be going to see, what networking contexts they're going to track down, what they might even have for lunch if that's part of the app. So if you get a user to buy in to the app before they get there, they're going to use it, because an app, instead of publishing generic content, becomes their personal itinerary.
Yeah.
And if that's become their guidebook for the day, they're going to use it. Of course, there's also the requirement to add additional digital content in the app, so streaming media. If you're going to use Facebook in the app. Yeah. If you're going to network in the app. If they leave it, they might not come back to it. So it needs to be very broad in its approach. It needs to be very complementary to how people will behave generally at an event.
So you were talking about disruptive technology.
Was I?
Yeah, you were, yeah. How your innovation is disruptive networking.
So part of the Alzheimer's crew. I don't remember what I came to say. It's all blur.
Time.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, disruption, it's different. It's to change behaviour. So yes, we want to try and change people's behaviour in the correct way, not necessarily steer them away from what they've always done, but improve what they've done in a subtle way where they enjoy it more so. So we have features, we have a few algorithms for matchmaking and for recommendation engines, which enrich and definitely aid the ability to push certain content and for the user to find relevance digitally.
Cool. Jason, same question.
Same answer. Yeah, exactly. There's not very little I can add to that. I think 100% correct. I think it is about engagement. I think it's about taking what we do all the time and just making it better, making it easier. I definitely agree. If you can stay in the app, that's where all the magic happens. The moment you leave the app to go back, it's like breaking up with your girlfriend and then deciding to go back after a while. Unless you find something worse, you're never going to go back. You're always upgrading. You're always moving to the next, more exciting, more period of time.
Upgrading girlfriends.
Exactly. I mean, when you're
Does
talking
your wife
about,
know this?
My wife, my third wife does know this, as luck would have it. I think it's a tough one. I think people talk about engagement and disruption, and they're buzzwords in our industry.
Yeah.
And sometimes my CEO and my CTO think that our app is disruptive and everything, and I think it's not. And I think it's an engagement piece. I mean, my app just connects people and has an algorithm that says, you're looking for this, and this is what it is, and tells those people to get involved. And it's just a community-driven piece. So is that disruptive? It's disruptive in the way that Uber's disruptive, in the fact that it's changed the way we look for cabs, but we're still looking for cabs. Yeah. We're still looking for cabs the cheapest we can, as fast as we can. Yeah. So in that way, it's about engagement and engaging the right audience.
Thank you. Robert, where are you?
Sorry,
do you know your question? Yes, you, Mr. Dunsmore. You're now on film. Yes. Yeah.
What was my question?
Oh, God.
Remind them.
You sent the questions to me. So, to you, Jason, first.
Yes.
How do we increase tech adoption at events?
Oh, good question. Nicely done. Hate you, Rob.
And he's supposed to be a friend.
I know, I was thinking that. I was like, aren't we in the same thing? How do we increase... Yeah, thank you. I'm going to throw it your way. How do we increase adoption? I think it's a tough one. I don't know. I think if the adoption is easy, I think if you're an African kid and you meet the Jolies, you're going to get adopted pretty quick, or an Asian. But otherwise, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I think if the piece of technology matches or marries the exact need, it's very easy. But in other times, when it's almost foreign to the use of the crowd and the purpose of the event, it's almost impossible to get that adoption. Classic example was recently at IMEX in Frankfurt. They had this great app that let you know where everyone was. But when you try to use it, it was just a photograph of a map. And to get us to adopt that was ridiculous, because we could easily just talk to people in the room and say, how do we get to the ISIS UK stand, because that's where everyone should be. And so I guess that's my answer.
Tweet that.
ISIS. Shameful plug. Hashtag. Do you want to take that one away?
Yeah, with Iain. How do we increase tech adoption? I suppose it's your point, the consumer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
develop that.
It's just why do you use technology in the first place? It's either there to, someone said it should be invisible, it's there to make your life better or make it easier or both. The second you start trying to shove a bit of technology in because you want to get something out of it, but there's nothing in it for the attendee, then it just doesn't work. So it's finding the right reasons to use certain bits of technology and then using the right tool to actually to get the job done. Can I do a shameless self-promotion?
Go.
So
you're giving your time for free, so go on.
so I work for Lumiinsight, and we do traditional handsets. So we do for years. We were IML a few years back, and we have these voting systems. Yeah. So really old voting systems. Disruption was talked about a minute ago. That we're disrupting our own business right now by taking that system and essentially putting it on an app, which is like crazy cheap to use compared to an installation of a system like that.
Yeah.
But the whole point of doing that is because we know that in most environments people want to have like a backwards and forwards question and answer environment, and we know that someone's going to build that, and it's going to be a good one. So we figured we might as well be the ones to build it and disrupt their own business. Because you look at Facebook, they've split out their apps. Their messaging tool is a separate app. LinkedIn is starting to do the same thing. There's 3 or 4 different apps that for use to use LinkedIn at the moment. You don't just go to the one place. So you've got to use the right piece of technology for the right reasons to get the right results, but it's got to be thinking from the point of view of the attendee first and not from the organiser.
Yeah. The thing is, so I've been hearing that forever, that we've got to think of the right reasons to use the right technology with the right audience to get the right results, but still people aren't doing it.
Because people want to make money.
So what do we need to do in order to change that? Is it on these guys to ask the right questions?
Yes and no. I think it is to a certain extent. I think there's the industry is doing quite a good job at the moment of actually trying to help educate people, and not in the terms of giving a presentation and just selling, just talking about what you sell. I know I just did that, but
we didn't notice. But I think you got away with it.
So I think that's quite good. Over the last couple of years, I find myself quite often on panel sessions with all my competitors, just talking about why you should use apps for certain reasons, but don't use it for these reasons. So there's an educational process from the tech providers who aren't just out trying to make some money, and that generally either comes from the startups who their overheads aren't so great, or it comes from the larger companies where they can invest. Yeah. And that's when you talk about innovation and stuff as well, and doing the things like Eventbase are doing. Startups can't do that stuff. It's way too expensive. But then it's also on the organiser's standpoint to decide what they want to achieve and actually engage with the tech providers, rather than just bolting it on at the end. Yeah. So that happened for years using those old systems. Like years ago, before the economy tanked, we'd get phone calls and say, right, I've got money to spend. What have you got? And those days are sort of long behind us, but that mentality is almost still there.
I've got some money to spend. What's shiny?
Yeah. But people, it's not necessarily it's not just on the providers to tell you what's available and why you should be using things. It's also on the event professionals to actually say, look, this is what I need.
Thank you, Andrew. Same question.
Repeat the question, please.
Robert asked it.
Exact wording.
How do we increase tech adoption at events?
So I would split that up into 2. And I'd say, how do you increase tech adoption from an attendee point of view? And how do you increase event tech adoption from an organiser's point of view? And I think from the attendee, it's fairly obvious. It needs to give them something. It needs to make them feel like if they don't have this, they're really missing out. Like loads of my friends who are not on Facebook anymore eventually come back on it when they realise they have no idea what anyone is doing and they're not invited to any parties anymore. If you take it from the organiser's perspective, I think 2 of the biggest issues I see are infrastructure at events that aren't good enough to actually work with the tech that's out there. So then they're constantly worried that the stuff isn't going to work. And that's basically the second fear, is that technology, if something's going to go wrong, it'll be technology that goes wrong. So I think tackling those issues are going to increase event technology adoption, is that making stuff more robust. And that comes through not only the infrastructure involved, but also the technology. To kind of do a little bit of a shameless plug, but also make a valid point with ThinkWall. When we started, we very quickly discovered that the chances of the Wi-Fi at an event being reliable was next to none, and there were AV concerns. You turned up and you couldn't get anyone to make any minor tweaks. So we built into the software the ability to reduce overscan on your screens, because you might have it on plasmas. Equally so, if the internet died at any moment, ThinkWall would just carry on, and it trickle feeds the data on in the background. So once you've got it up and running, you never have to worry about it. In fact, a lot of our clients come to us because they've been using other people's software and it's been crashing, or it's been having all these things. So it's been built into our ethos, and I think that same ethos needs to be taken in by other people as well. So that's probably the key way I would look at it.
I suppose it's the ethos of every event planner that they can't have anything that crashes. So
no,
technology
exactly.
is just another worry in the.
It's probably, I would say, it'd be interesting to see what other people think, but lots of people I talk, technology going wrong is one of their biggest worries.
Yeah.
So that's the thing it's solving.
Any questions from the floor before we move on? No. So Iain, here's an interesting one. Do you feel event apps are taking away the direct communication that meetings are for, and the ability for people to just say hello to each other?
Yeah.
Good answer, right. Jason?
The greatest environment for networking is still the coffee stand. And there's a lot of companies that are trying to figure out a way of technically putting people together and making introductions and stuff, but there's nothing beats a one-to-one meeting. And we probably all fly around the world to go and meet colleagues or clients or whatever, just because you need to have that face-to-face from time to time. So yeah, it's definitely taken away from that. And there's sometimes too much pressure on the technology to try and make things happen that are unrealistic.
Yeah.
Because quite often the budgets aren't big enough to spend the money on putting a piece of technology in there that actually might suffice in that environment. But yeah, 100%.
So do you think that's looking for technology solutions to make people's lives easier? Is that what that is about?
It can be. It can be. It's I think people will bring in a piece of technology because they think it's going to make people's lives easier, or they might think, from an organizer standpoint, they might think it'll make their life easier. But it actually doesn't give anything to the attendees because it's a nuisance.
Yeah, it was Andrew's point about adding value to the audience. So do you think we're using technology in the wrong ways?
No, I completely disagree with you. I think that if you take networking as a whole, not everyone is a natural networker. In fact, most people aren't. And the hardest part of networking is, in fact, the ice breaking, that initial thing. Where technology really helps with that is being able to kind of go, oh, that person looks interesting, or you see something come up on a Twitter wall and you can see their face and their name, straight away you know their name or you know where they work from. It gives you something to just go over there and start that conversation, which still happens in a coffee area, but it really helps because it's that first bit is the hardest bit, and it solves that problem. It shouldn't replace the conversation, but it solves that first problem.
I know you've got a lot to say on this, Jamie. So are the apps stopping us making personal contact?
No. Sorry. 100% no. Used correctly, they are encouraging conversation. Conversation will never go away. People talk. It's why we're here. It's what events are about. And I love events. I love going to a booth and talking to people. It's never going to change. Correct technology will only enhance that through ice breaking, as Andrew declared, and through elements of declaration of who's here. To give you some examples, shameless plug, maybe not, but we have an algorithm for matchmaking. I did an article called Tinder for Events, where based on your actual in-app profile, the app will make suggestions to you based on common themes who you should talk to. I went to South by Southwest this year. I went to South by Southwest this year in Austin, Texas. I booked 12 face-to-face meetings through my app before I got on a plane. That didn't stop me talking. I love talking, as you can tell. And I talked a lot more. But it was the algorithm that suggested who I should talk with that made that effect. Case number 2, we use iBeacons effectively for networking. So we create networking areas, networking lounges, which upon when an app user enters this area, iBeacons, for those who don't know, Bluetooth Low Energy, they're based on physicality, where you are. It knows you're in the lounge, and we create communities within communities. So the community was the people who were in the bar, and they were all declared to each other, and you can network with each other. We have in-app messaging, which doesn't stop you talking. It's about saying, hey, I didn't know you were here, fancy a beer.
Yeah.
So I think the right answer is innovation should encourage face-to-face discussion. And used correctly, it does.
So the 12 meetings that you booked before you got on the plane,
Yeah.
good or bad?
They're all from London, ironically.
Amazing, yeah.
Funnily enough.
Good reason for getting on the plane
And
to Austin.
we all went to Austin and drank tequila, so I can't remember.
Jason, are apps taking away the direct communication, the personal contact?
Let me first say, VenueMe, hashtag the grinder of venues and event planners.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Why Grindr and not Tinder?
Because Grindr gets my action. Ask anyone. Okay. I'm going to say yes and no, weirdly enough, and I'm quite surprised by this. One, I don't wear socks. Kind of a known thing. I don't wear socks. And why? Because people need a reason to talk to me standing at a coffee bar. So I don't agree with you. If I go to a coffee bar...
That's the only reason?
That's the only reason I don't wear
I
socks.
can think of so many more.
I guarantee. I can't. I'm small-minded. Plus, my mankles can start a conversation at 100 paces. So that's the reason for it. Social media, exactly what you said. Thanks to Twitter, people walk up to me in venues who I never had a chance and say, I know you from your profile picture. I've recognized 17 people here from their Twitter profile. So 100% agree on that. Where I disagree is what you said, whereas the face-to-face is never going to change. The new generation hates face-to-face. Can't stand it. They love things where they can talk via the internet, where their friends are all over the world and they're talking via their PlayStation 4 or via their Xbox One.
Yeah.
And I do think technology will eventually replace the face-to-face. I think you and I, we're from a different generation where we feel like we have to have that meeting. We have to fly to Austin to drink tequila. I think the new generation probably will never leave Silicon Valley and will make more money and have more meetings than both of us in our entire lifetimes. And people that I'm talking to currently who are building tech, my friend's become the new CEO of Tinder, and she was saying the hardest part is they don't want to meet even after they've matched on the app. So it's a very different world. Which, kind of the pointless thing. That's ironic. I mean, yeah. I've got them. Well, I'll take that off. I'll just take that.
I'm writing that down. I'm taking that as a win.
Exactly. 62 girls rocking this.
It's probably better that way.
It's so much better. It's easier. It's what costs you less money in marriage. I think it's a mixture of the two, but I do think that it does help with the face. It helps with the meetings. I don't know about the face-to-face. I think that's where it's different.
Yeah. So on that point, great point. And I'm not quite sure. I totally agree with the last point. I have a son and a daughter, teenagers, and they do everything virtually. So I get your point. I also have seen the rise and the demise of virtual events, right? They've never caught on. Yeah. They've never made any money. No one's really ever attended them because people, I think, naturally like to sit in a room and talk sometimes.
Well, this is
I disagree with that. Sorry. What you're saying about the virtual, I don't think it's anything to do with the fact that they don't want to be talking to someone. It's the psychology of feeling wanted when someone actually invites you somewhere physical versus like just sending out an e-invite. Oh, we're doing a webinar. You're just going to ignore it. But it's interesting.
But also, I did
go on.
Piece of research on it. So it's the commitments that you get in the room. Yeah. So if you're at a virtual event and you say you're going to do something, it's a bit like being on a conference call. No one's really listening, and so everyone says yes. And it's always a no. Mm-hmm. So you don't get any action out of it.
Yeah. But also what you were saying earlier, Jason, about digital natives now, or the new guys coming through, millennials, in terms of not wanting face-to-face. I was having this exact discussion with someone the other day about raising children in that should you be stopping them from using technology to a certain point until they have their social skills and then saying, right, now you can use a tablet, now you can do this. And then I was like, well, hang on a second. We're assuming that our values now are going to stay the same. You could actually be crippling them because they'll be the only kids in class that actually have the ability to talk to people, and then they get depressed because they can't talk to them because they haven't learned to use it from the ground up.
It's like the parents who are insisting their children don't type. They've learned to write first.
Yeah.
We won't be writing soon.
No.
There won't be any writing.
I'm 36 and I can barely write.
I get cramp after about 20 seconds.
But that's another subject. Okay. So where are we in the thing? So I'm going to ask you this one. So it's David from NHS. David? No. Can you build an event app on a predetermined budget? And more importantly, what's the starting price?
Oh, the elephant in the room.
Has money.
Up. Yeah, money. So I'm going to answer this with some statistics.
Amazing.
You like that, don't you? I did a little bit of research, and this is. I don't understand. I won't verify the source. Go online and Google it yourself. In 2014, over 50 billion was spent on digital advertising. Only 10 of that was attributed to mobile advertising.
Okay.
However, in 2014, it swapped. Internet traffic, the largest portion of internet traffic is through mobile devices.
Yeah.
Okay, so mobile advertising, which is where we're going with this one, has to be genuinely seen, accepted, acknowledged, and executed by organisers as a way to spend money on apps.
Yeah.
I have a selection of clients, and we're not cheap, I can put that out there, we're not the cheapest app out there, who do not pay any money. They actually use my app as a revenue centre to make money. Okay, they just need to think out the box. And some of the big organisers are shamefully poor at this because they have silos of sponsorship against this, and there's this marketing spend which is minuscule, and they can't afford my app even though I'll get 5 times return on their money, but they can't get their head around that. And that's a massive education piece that I'm trying to drive home right now. So I totally didn't answer your question.
No, but it's a good point.
We learned a lot.
No, but that's what this is about. But it's a good point that you shouldn't be seeing it as a cost. You should be seeing it as an opportunity.
It is an opportunity to make money, and I would challenge anyone who's got a decent event that they should be looking at technology, correct technology, as cost neutral.
Yeah,
they really, really, really should.
Or any decent event.
Quite.
As someone who's building an app currently, and I wish I
Not
had gone
me.
to you. No, I was just thinking that. I was like, damn it. I found the cost to be, for our particular app that has 2 algorithms and pretty small, I thought, in comparison to the apps that are out there and platform rights, they seem to go from 7 to $750,000. And again, based on, is it based in Prague? Is it based in India? Is it based in Silicon Valley? Who are the clients they've worked for? And I suppose much like an event agency, if you're dealing with the big event agencies and you look at their testimonials and so forth, you think, oh, I can see where my money's going to. But I also agree that if you can see that you're going to make back the money, it's a lot easier to spend that initial forefront. But talking to people at the Las Vegas Event Tech Awards, and I asked that question, how much did you spend? It was a big question for me because we're about to spend a bunch of money on an app and I wanted to know the basic parameters. And a lot of them said, well, in the beginning, we just created an MVP, for those that don't know, a minimum viable product. So a smaller app that could get the money in, that we could then build the bigger app, and we could pivot and change and move and get bigger and bigger. And if we could, we'd use stuff that already exists, chaff that sits on the internet, that's already a pre-existing algorithm, already a pre-existing framework. And that brought their cost down, as opposed to creating something brand new and exciting.
And sorry, is that what you've done? Have you got?
So we've got an algorithm from Amazon.
A stage one, and then
we've got. So we're looking at 2 algorithms. We've brought an algorithm from Amazon that says you like this, you'll like this. So you've chosen 1 Wimpole Street, you will love 1 Chandos House. It just happens that both same company. You love the O2 venue because of its originality and its space. You will love whatever the opposite of that is. So there's nothing better than the O2. Shameless plug.
SECC.
Yes. Who tweeted me? Thank you. So that's the algorithm we've bought, which already exists. So that's brought down our costs massively. And then the platform we've used to find things, again, exists because of Google's many receptors that tells you where things are all over the world. And there's a proper name for that. I can't think of it. Geolocator, I think is the correct terminology. So that's been a lot cheaper for us. What's been expensive for us is the platform to host all that data and all those identities and everyone's LinkedIn profile so that it can say, Jason Scott from Hollywood Inc. is looking at 1 Wimpole Street now for his event on. That's the big chunk of change for us. That's what we found here.
Sorry, you wanted to speak.
Well, so that's a custom app, so it's always going to be the most expensive way to build an app. If you go build it and you want to own IP and the day it's published, we expect it's out of date, right? So a lot of the app providers can keep that cost down massively by offering a SaaS service. So come someone like me or most of the competitors out there, our job is to deploy the best-in-class apps, but our R&D team behind the scenes are always innovating, always pushing the boundaries. So you're paying 10 times less per year. You never own anything, but you're always upgrading and using the latest technology, and it brings the prices down significantly where it can be funded. But the other point I was going to make very quickly, as our friend Andrew alluded to earlier, 2 clients. There are 3 people in this equation, right? There is the user, there is the big bad organizer, and then there's the exhibitor, right? And there are ways to monetize technology through to that third party if there is suitable benefit in there for them. And obviously things like lead retrieval services, IP and contextual plus messaging, et cetera, sponsorship is very much part of our portfolio where significant sums of money can be received through correct technology. And I think that's a really interesting debate, probably a different debate about can I put an event on and give exhibitors free space if they pay per lead or they pay on the quality of the service they receive. And I think technology can drive that type of event through. They're going to love paying that. I think it's going to happen at some point. I think it's going to happen at some point.
Do you?
Yeah. I haven't been doing it, but I think it will.
So no one's put up a price yet. So, Iain, can you build an event app on a predetermined price, and what would that price be?
Yeah, you can, but it depends on what you want to achieve. I mean, there's, I think the cheapest we do is...
10 grand or 100 grand? That's the question.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think ballpark.
I think the cheapest price, so Joe's an account manager for us, 3 grand?
Yeah.
So, yeah, 3 grand, you can have a decent event app. There's some companies out there that do a decent one for £800. But, you know, the functionality is not going to be anywhere near what you may be looking for, and it's going to be 100% rely on HTML, and so you need the Wi-Fi infrastructure. That's going to cost you significantly more than 3 grand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, or you can spend an absolute fortune. But there's a company that I've worked with. I work with a bunch of different like startups and stuff around Europe. And one of the ones I was working with for a while, they were building event apps for football stadiums. And they're basically putting these apps into stadiums in Germany, and they were paying the expense of fitting it out with Wi-Fi and then taking a cut of the ticket sales. And within 4 games, they were making a profit. It was absolutely phenomenal. So we were talking about doing it in the US as well, but the amount of money had to put out up front was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But because people didn't trust it, people didn't, you know, the people that were buying in the technology, they didn't believe that they could actually make money from this thing.
Yeah.
It's like what you were saying. It's how do you make money from the technology you're using rather than how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want hard figures, it's anything from say £800 to £3,000 for something average. You want something amazing.
I suppose the issue
7,
is
8, 10
if
plus.
we're looking for, if this debate is innovation or cashing in, then if you're paying 800 quid for an app, you're not going to be innovating.
No.
Are you, Andrew?
No, I think if your focus is on how much is it going to cost me, you're probably in one of those event organisers that is a tick boxer, as I like to call them, where they're like, oh, we have an event app, tick, client will be happy we have a thing, rather than actually looking, well, hang on a minute, what are my objectives here? Yeah. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, as Jamie was rightly saying, that you shouldn't even be looking at it in that regard, in that if you can achieve what you're trying to do, then the money doesn't come into it as much. And certainly, not everyone wants to advertise through their apps, but certainly I know we have a lot of clients that they make more money than they pay us through selling advertising on ThinkWall.
Of course, yeah. Can you use the thing? You just press the button, is it? No, because it's all on video and we won't get your question.
I'll ask the question first and I'll put it on there, mate. So, if I'm an event organiser and I want to build an app to say 10 grand budget, but I've got a series of 10 events, can I change the app per event, tweak it, or have I got to buy the 10 apps 10 times?
Yeah, you can. You can. You can buy a container essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, you brand it up. So you do the container app, put it through the App Store, and it will. Sorry, I jumped in. Is that right?
No, go on.
You put it through the App Store, and then you put whatever content you need in there. And then once it's all been approved, you can change the content that's inside it. And then you just pay a per event license fee.
Okay.
But yeah, you're not restricted. You're just keeping it static.
Correct. I mean, so the notion of multiple event apps, you build the technical framework on that, which is downloaded by a single user, and then in theory, each subsequent event is just content, which can be pulled in from your CMS tool. So we have a CMS tool that is live real time, and anyone else can go in and change anything they choose and republish that app at any time. So you're right, it's a funnel, it's a vehicle for doing that. Of course, then it's the point of lowest common denominator, right? So the shell has to do all features. You can't bring in and configure extra things. That's the whole rebuild again. So you have to be aware. We do like Hewlett Packard World Tour. We do 80 events a year for Gartner Symposium, World Symposium, and they're all in one app. 80 in one every year. It's amazing. It works really, really well.
And Cecilia's just gone. So seems to be a resistance / slow adoption to embrace new technology, not just event apps. Why do you think that is, and how can the industry overcome those challenges? Where are we now? You.
I kind of touched on that already.
Go on.
In that I do think infrastructure is one of the biggest problems.
Event
with
infrastructure?
That. Yeah,
or
venue
infrastructure.
infrastructure. And to some extent temporary. In fact, often, no, temporary stuff is often better because they're designed to be rolled out and run as one. But yeah, I think that's kind of reiterates what I was saying earlier about tech adoption. Really, I do think infrastructure is definitely something he's working on.
How can we encourage better, faster adoption by the event industry?
Well, I looked at that question. I wrote down, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I was all taught that when I was young, and it's sort of not true, right? Because we are evolving. So we've done the last 3 Olympic Games. Would you expect Olympic Games without a mobile app? You probably wouldn't nowadays.
No.
We do the largest pop festivals in the world. You would expect a mobile presence for those shows. So I don't think it's as bad as you think, but I think when we look down the platform of size of organisers and the audiences that they capture, it's always going to be tough down the bottom because of cost, and they feel one of the objections I get is, well, the audience isn't really that way inclined, you know.
Always.
All these old blokes.
Yeah, it's
like
always
us.
the same thing.
You know, it's not actually true. We did a campaign recently for SAP, you know, who are a big enterprise software company, and the most popular feature was a gamification engine, playing games, running around, networking with people. It was a £10,000 per first prize, right? So that was slightly encouraging. But even so, they all played the game. It was the most engaging part of that app. So I think we have preconceptions as well, which need to be changed. And the pricing is definitely a preconception that needs to be changed. And I'll throw in...
For nothing.
For nothing, we do an app for nothing.
Go on.
Yeah, don't say anymore. That's got everyone cool. No, there is an event-based free product. So if you look at the real commodity end of the market, with respect, why pay 800 or a couple of grand if you're not getting something terribly engaging? Get it for nothing. Event-based free is a free app. You go online, see it, install, build your own app, publish it. It has massive limitations, but it's actually all right. With about 4,000 customers a year using it.
Yeah, wow. Amazing.
It's amazing we're charging money for it. We're missing a trick there, I think.
Well,
change.
So, Jason, how do we get the event industry to adopt technology/apps quicker?
You said everything I wanted to say, so
I
I know, but you do keep doing it. So I'm not of the agreement that if it's not broke, don't fix it, because Henry Ford said people wanted faster horses, they didn't want cars. So I'm not a big firm believer in that. I think you have to be innovative, you have to think outside the box. I look at my technological clients. I did an event recently for HP, did an event recently for Samsung, and they wanted technology, purely for technology's sake, because they're technology people. So surprisingly, one of them didn't have a big budget, so we went and we took a piece of tech that already exists in Vegas, which is face recognition, and we did a Q&A like this, and we asked the room, what is the best-selling blah, 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 and they had to look up in a certain corner. So A was this phone, B, phones, I guess it was Samsung. So that was A phone, that was B phone, that was C phone, D phone. Everyone looked to the right one. The camera picked up exactly who it was, worked out who you were, and said, John Smith, row 3, stand up, give us the answer. And they got up, and that was a great response. And it was in Italy, and the Italians loved all of it. And they got up and they did a little dance. It was awesome. So there was someone who had lots of money, and although not as much as we'd like them to have had, but they already knew there was pre-existing software that existed. I agree with the venues thing. I think so many venues I go into, they haven't even got a good computer, let alone, they're still writing on a little book, or there's big screens at the back. It's like a Beyonce computer. It's all back and no front. And you're trying to explain to them how this thing works, or they should try and use this new technology piece, or they should try a CRM, and they're just thinking, CRM? Wow, that's like the future. How do you explain to them about wearables or RFID or even QR codes? It's easier on a TEM structure, 100% right. It's easier if you've got an event, you've got a big space, and you put everything in, and there it is, ready to go, and you zip it out and move it accordingly. So yeah. So what you both said.
Has Iain answered? Have you answered?
Ian, no, Ian's next.
I was going to say I want to add something.
Well, we're going to go to Iain first.
What was the question again?
How do we get the event industry to adopt quicker technology?
Yeah, everything those guys have said. Take more risks, maybe. Sometimes people are reluctant to try something new. And that whole cookie cutter thing that we talked about with event apps, the same thing can be said about events. So people don't want to take risks. They don't want to, which is understandable, but at the same time, someone's got to be the first to do it.
Andrew, you're burning to...
I was going to say offer fallback. If you look at what Lumi's doing, they still have the IML handsets. There are lots of people that still like that. They don't want to use an app. We actually do a surprising number of events where the idea of an app or even social media scares the hell out of them, and we use SMS and MMS. and we get loads of people using that. So, which actually swings it round to the issue is not the organisers, it's the people attending, and that's something that's beyond the scope of an event organiser to try and manipulate. And then that comes down to knowing your audience right and choosing the right technology. So maybe the adoption isn't there. It's just because your audience isn't right for it.
Back to the start. There's a very difficult question coming up, and you may not want to answer this. So, and I might ask you. So, if event apps are innovating, who is the standout brand, and how do they innovate? So, So it's you first.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say me.
Eventbase. No. Someone else.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'll say Eventbase.
No. Okay. So Eventbase, obviously number one. Second to us, I don't know. I mean, so innovation is a peculiar thing, right? It comes in many shapes and sizes.
Yep.
So maybe a better question you could have asked would have been, where is innovation taking us? What's the next thing? And I think that's probably where the secret is going to be. Yeah. Someone will come along with something that you think, my God, does that not exist already?
Yeah.
Why hasn't someone done that already? And we don't know what it is yet, because we haven't thought about it, but that's where it's going, and they will take the lead. I think we are the most innovative app provider, but purely on a pre-configured platform basis. We probably won't beat custom apps, but they're 10 times the price. So they're the true innovators, where a client goes and says, I want to do all this, and it doesn't even exist right now, and they go off and spend a year writing it. That's innovation. We're innovating in a different way, whereas we have to appease hundreds of clients a year with common themes, and it goes into a product set. So it's slightly different.
Thank you. Jason?
So the comment that he made where he said something that we're already using, we suddenly see it in a different way. Crowd mics. I love crowd mics. I think it's genius. Instead of passing the mic around, give it a mic, you pick up your phone, you press the app, you talk through it, and it amplifies through all the AV in the room. Yeah. Genius. We use it all the time. We're all used to our phones. It's not new technology in the fact that we're still speaking to our phone, yet it's got a new function. So I'm really excited about what crowd mics does next.
Cool. Iain, who's innovating?
Hashtag VenueMe. Sorry, Karen.
I think it depends on on how you look at innovation. Innovation as a whole is a creative way of looking at an existing problem. So, like you say, crowd mics, they have taken a microphone system and they put it in your pocket. The same way that Instagram took a camera and put it in your pocket. So there's a lot of the event apps. There's a lot of them doing the same thing. There's a bunch of people that are doing something very, very specific, and that's what they're getting a name for. Like Eventbase being one of them. They've got a big name in the industry because of the work you're doing with beacons. No one else is touching you for that. I have to say Lumi, so it worked for. One of the big things we're doing is actually moving slightly away from the event app. So, we have the event app for when people need it, but then we also have the other tools that are much more specific. So, for your question and answer environment and your community environment, we're focusing more on that because we believe there's actually more of a demand for that type of tool than there is purely for what is now a traditional event app, even though it's only 3 years old.
Yeah. Andrew?
I don't actually feel I could authoritatively answer that question. And largely because I just don't think I've had enough exposure to other event apps and competitors. I think my method towards working is not to be monitoring what everyone else is doing so much. Yeah. And that's, I think, part of how innovation works, is if you're just focused on what you think you should be happening and not copying everyone else.
Yeah, so Alex Ferguson of...
I don't feel like...
You don't look at the opposition.
It's not that I don't look, but I don't look intently.
Well, on that point, actually, it's fair to say, so we work for delivering apps, but there's lots of elements within our apps that isn't actually our technology. Yeah. And that's innovation as well, not just on our part, but innovating with other people to ensure that the end result is the best it can possibly be. We're not proud. If we bring in third party, we use third party for mapping, sometimes very, very good mapping. We don't do that ourselves. We're not going to do that. So we bring a third party in. We use social aggregators. We don't do that. So the end result is a very powerful, engaging app. But it's not all our technology. But that's another way to look at it.
Technology agnostic, I think was a comment.
Yeah.
Someone
what a
said,
lovely term.
Lovely, right? Yeah. Madeline from Blondfish said it the first time I ever heard it.
Indeed. She got it from me.
Does she?
Good. So we've run out of time. I want to promote next month's Event Huddle. So it's Jan 13th, and it's the big EU debate. We've got a very heavyweight political panel next time. Should the event industry get behind the in or the out vote as far as the European community is involved. Hope you'll join us for that. Only now to say Happy Christmas to you all. Thanks for coming. Drinks and nibbles next door. So please thank Iain, Andrew, Jamie and Jason.